The house is loud before the sun fully rises. A mother slips into her twin boys' bedroom to rouse them, while downstairs her husband flips something on the stove. Down the hall, their daughter Sophie belts out a tune as she flat irons her hair, rehearsing for tryouts for her school's musical. A stray pass of the iron catches her cheek, and her mother, Elizabeth, hurries in to fix both the hair and the small burn. Between fixes, Sophie fills her in. The show is Waitress the Musical, and she's sure her best friend Mallory will land the lead role of Jenna, while she herself might snag Dawn, the comic relief best friend. Elizabeth assures her she'll shine either way. Downstairs, Dad tosses Sophie a banana. The twins cleaned out the bagels before driving the boys to school. On his way out, he tells his wife it'll all be fine. Sophie gets one more pep talk from her mom, then debates whether good luck or break a leg is the right send-off before hugging goodbye and catching a ride with her friend Carolyn. At school, the girls spot the audition flyer with excitement. Meanwhile, Dad arrives at the diner he runs, briefing his staff for the day ahead. By afternoon, class lets out, and Sophie heads to the auditorium, where their teacher runs the group through warm-up exercises and introduces Miss Parker, the musical's director. First up is Trista, whose jittery energy draws sideways looks from the room, rattling Sophie's nerves until Carolyn steadies her. Then Mallory takes the stage and nails it, all while Sophie sneaks glances at a boy named Jack. Once auditions wrap, Miss Parker posts the cast list. Jack lands the male lead, Mallory gets Jenna as predicted, and Sophie, just as she guessed, is cast as Dawn. She's thrilled regardless. At the same time, Elizabeth sits in a clinic beside her husband. A stranger nearby remarks how nice it is that she brought her spouse, admitting she hasn't found the courage to tell hers yet. The couple is called back to hear from the doctor. Back at rehearsal, Miss Parker walks the cast through the story. Their lead, Jenna, waits tables and bakes pies using her late mother's recipes, all while pregnant and trapped in a rough relationship with the child's father. Sophie ducks into the restroom to run her lines when a call from home leaves her shaken. Carolyn notices something's off, but it's her turn to perform, and Mallory talks her through a few calming breaths before she steps out and sings beautifully, catching Miss Parker's attention. That evening, when Elizabeth asks how the audition went, Sophie brushes it off with a flat, "Fine." At dinner, her father asks everyone to gather together. Later that night, on the phone with Carolyn, Sophie finally breaks. Her mother's cancer is back. The doctor says she'll fight it, and she doesn't want it getting out. She hangs up in tears. The next day, the cast list goes up. Mallory tells Sophie she doesn't have to take the part, because Mallory got Dawn, and Sophie got the lead. Overjoyed, Sophie rushes to tell her family at the diner, and they head out to celebrate at a restaurant. Mid-celebration, a woman stops by to offer condolences to Elizabeth, though the family insists tonight is about Sophie's big news, even as the woman keeps returning to Elizabeth's illness, praising her resilience. Afterward, Elizabeth tries to lift Sophie's spirits and asks about the performance date. It lands 2 weeks before their annual beach trip. Sophie worries the trip might not happen, but Elizabeth insists it will. At school the next day, Sophie highlights her script and has an awkward first real conversation with Jack. Rehearsal brings a circle exercise in character accents. Jack and Mallory nail theirs, but Sophie fumbles hers. Waiting to pick her up, Elizabeth eagerly offers to teach her driving, but Sophie climbs into the car in a sour mood, convinced Miss Parker made a casting mistake. Elizabeth has a better idea. A trip to the mall, where she has Sophie practice her accent on a very confused salesperson while buying swimsuits. They keep the bit going through massages and a pizza order, and later Elizabeth reads through the script with her, coaxing Sophie into the character's emotional core. She reassures her daughter, no mistake was made. At the next rehearsal, Sophie still hesitates, and Miss Parker encourages her to stop performing the accent technically and instead lose herself in the role. Sophie glances at Carolyn, distracted on her phone. Riding home, Carolyn opens up about her girlfriend Erin, admitting she's not particularly invested in the play since her role is just one line. Back at the diner, Elizabeth keeps pushing to teach Sophie to drive, and Sophie finally caves. But as they're leaving, Elizabeth suddenly gets sick and vomits blood, begging her daughter not to look. The parents rush to the doctor, and in the car afterward, they absorb the news. She isn't going to survive this. Elizabeth's first worry is whether the beach trip will still happen, and she insists the kids can't know yet. If Sophie finds out, she'll drop out of the show. Her husband says they'll figure it out. Privately, she just wants him to know she's struggling, nothing more. They agree to tell the children after the show during the beach trip. Elizabeth also suggests calling her parents for support, reluctantly agreeing they should. The grandparents arrive, and while the family prepares food, Sophie's grandfather offers to teach her driving since her mother can't. Elizabeth offers her mother some of the food, but she declines the cheese, though Sophie's grandfather happily eats it, to Elizabeth's mild disappointment. At the next rehearsal, the scene calls for Sophie's character to kiss Jack's. Miss Parker offers to let them fake it, but both say they're fine doing it for real. Sophie fumbles her entrance and hesitates before the kiss. Miss Parker reminds her she's the one who initiates it. She tries again, kisses him, then gets notes to tone down her smile since her character should seem regretful. Feeling awkward, she goes again. That night she buries herself in music, while the adults argue downstairs over the stress of Elizabeth's illness. At school, Sophie excitedly recaps rehearsal to Carolyn when Aaron stops by to ask about a hike. It comes out that Carolyn lied about a doctor's appointment to skip the audition. She's quit the show entirely. Sophie storms off, telling her she no longer needs a ride home. Sophie asks Miss Parker for extra rehearsal time, which is granted, and daily practice becomes routine as her grandfather continues her driving lessons, and her brother's birthday comes and goes. Miss Parker praises the progress, noting the DJ, Fishman, is doing great work on the music, though Sophie's solo still needs polish. As homework, she's asked to interview her mother about what it was like being pregnant with her. Leaving rehearsal, Jack invites Sophie to run lines together. Her grandfather is there to pick her up, but lets her go with Jack instead, joking that her father would have said no. At home, Elizabeth's mother checks whether she's still sure about hiding the diagnosis from Sophie. She confirms she is, then asks her mother to read to her. Jack drives Sophie home, nervously admitting he's stressed about the show. But Sophie reminds him he crushed it as Cinderella's prince last year. He asks her to go lighter on the kissing, less tongue, and embarrassed, she agrees, teasingly adding his nose was a bit off-angle during their kiss, before heading inside. Sophie finds Elizabeth, and half-joking, asks if she's a good kisser. Her mom says at least her husband thinks so, then pivots to the actual homework question about the pregnancy. Elizabeth briefly panics that Sophie herself might be pregnant, but it's just a prank for the assignment. She then shares the real story: the anxiety over diet, the unsolicited opinions about how the baby would look, and the joy when Sophie arrived. Beautiful. The next day at rehearsal, Jack pulls Sophie aside, and she drops her prop belly on the way out. He suggests they ease into their comfort with the kiss and practice again, which they do. He asks if his nose angle was better this time, but Miss Parker interrupts, calling them back in. At home, Elizabeth offers Sophie one of her old dresses for the show, but Sophie explains the costume's already set by Miss Parker. Elizabeth waves off her disappointment. Sophie browses Jack's profile online, quickly closing it when Carolyn's name pops up. At a family lunch, they discuss Mother's Day plans, but Sophie has rehearsal that day. Her grandmother calls it a holiday. Her grandfather shrugs it off as not a real one. Sophie's grandmother pushes her to skip rehearsal, and when Sophie says the cast is counting on her, her grandmother gets more upset until Elizabeth steps in and the table goes silent. Later, her grandfather advises Sophie to vent to a friend. That evening, Sophie goes to Carolyn's, who hugs her without hesitation. Meanwhile in bed, Elizabeth tells her husband she wants to leave immediately for the beach. He suggests waiting until after Mother's Day. Carolyn reminds Sophie that every family carries complicated history, and apologizes for quitting the show without warning her first. Sophie apologizes too, for not understanding what Carolyn was going through. Just then, Carolyn gets a message about an empty house and a party with 3 cats, and the girls decide to go. At the party, Sophie watches the cats while Carolyn flirts with Aaron. Sophie grabs a drink, then wanders to the piano. Some kids mock her for playing show tunes, but she ignores them and sings, until she suddenly gets sick and throws up on the furniture. Lying ill afterward, Carolyn checks on her and realizes it's well past when Sophie should be home. Her dad is already on the way. Aaron helps rush them into the car, so they arrive just in time. Sophie, thoroughly drunk, brushes her teeth right as her father pulls up. Carolyn urges her to deliver the performance of her life. In the car, her father is furious she missed her 9 p.m. curfew. She blames a silenced phone. He catches a whiff of something suspicious, but she denies it, cracks the window, and passes out. The next morning, the grandparents head home. It's Mother's Day, celebrated at the family diner, when an argument breaks out with a customer irritated by the kids bumping into his elderly mother. Sophie's dad tries smoothing things over by comping the meal, but Elizabeth, furious, shoves their kale wraps at the man instead. He leaves, and moments later Elizabeth collapses. The family catches her before she hits the ground. At the hospital, the couple sits together shaken. Back home, Sophie's father breaks the news that her mom can't attend the performance. Sophie, blindsided, gets an offer to watch a recording instead, or maybe have her mom sing to her privately, but she leaves in tears, saying it's fine. At the next rehearsal, Miss Parker notices Sophie's flat energy and pulls her aside, encouraging her that even if it's not for a big audience, she can give something meaningful, to others, or just to herself, because the work she's put in already shows. She sends the cast off to unwind. Disco lights go up, Fishman spins music, everyone dances, scribbles favorite show titles on a whiteboard, and trades famous lines. As Jack steps out to the bathroom, some friends push a nervous Fishman to go talk to Sophie, but she slicks away to find Jack instead. Meanwhile, Elizabeth sits down to write an email to Miss Parker. Walking the hallway with a smile, Sophie freezes when she sees Jack kissing Mallory. She laughs it off, claiming she has a boyfriend. Before heading back, she finds TJ sitting alone on the stairs, who tells her everyone's making out inside, and it's best not to go in. He jokes that at least she got a stage kiss. He's never even had a fake one. They share a quiet moment, agree it's best not to go there, and she rests her head on his shoulder. Later, Jack offers Sophie a ride home. In the car, he admits he's nervous for tomorrow's final rehearsal, and she reassures him he'll do great. Right before he leans in to kiss her, she asks if it's practice. He shakes his head no. She calls him out for kissing Mallory earlier, suggesting he only joins these shows to kiss around, and tells him, a little sadly, not to let it mess up the show, and gets out. The next morning the whole cast preps to fully embody their roles. Unbeknownst to Sophie, Miss Parker connects Elizabeth via video call, as requested the night before, though TJ notices the setup. The cast warms up, and the show begins, with Elizabeth watching happily from home. Mid-performance, a prop malfunctions, and they pause. Backstage, everyone buzzes about the mystery viewer on the video call, unaware, it's Sophie's mother. Just before restarting, Jack quietly tells Sophie he's sorry to hear her mom is sick. TJ had told him, and shares a bit about his own parents' divorce to comfort her. The rest of the cast offers condolences too, overwhelming her. As the show resumes, Elizabeth suddenly falls ill at home, and calls out for her husband. The sound carries through the open laptop, and Sophie bolts off stage, breaking down outside, until Miss Parker rushes over to comfort her. Back home, Sophie confronts her mother, furious she hid the diagnosis. Elizabeth tries to praise her performance, but Sophie demands honesty, and Elizabeth finally admits she's not going to survive. Sophie collapses in tears, and her mother holds her. The next morning, her father posts a short hours sign at the diner, while Elizabeth stays in bed sick. Sophie takes over waking her brothers, and the family heads to school. In the car, her dad admits everything happening is unfair to all of them, and that trying to soften it for her isn't really possible. But they all love her, he says, holding her hand. At school, Carolyn surprises her with a gift, and the news that she and Aaron are officially together. Sophie jokes that at least one of them is kissing the right person. With the play's promotional flyers now out, Sophie is getting ready backstage when a text arrives from her mother. Overwhelmed, she finds Mallory, tells her she'll be a wonderful Jenna, and announces she's quitting, then rushes home to her mother. They embrace, both admitting how scared they are. Sophie asks who will take care of them if they're both frightened, and Elizabeth answers they'll simply have to take care of themselves. When Elizabeth asks about her costume, Sophie reveals she's quit. She can't bear to lose another moment with her mother. Elizabeth tells her she has always searched for the thing that would truly light her up in life. Sophie apologizes that her mother never found it, but Elizabeth says she did, while gently stroking her daughter's head. At the auditorium, the whole family gathers. Elizabeth calls her own mother, and insists she remain a real part of Sophie's and all their lives going forward. Her mother agrees. Elizabeth mentions wanting them at the show, unaware they're already there. Meanwhile, Sophie, driving for the first time on her own, arrives at the theater and rushes to the green room to apologize, only to find Mallory already dressed as Dawn, having anticipated Sophie's return and admitting she actually prefers the role anyway. Sophie takes the stage, delivering an emotional, tear-filled performance. Afterward, she builds a small makeshift stage in their backyard to perform it again just for her mother. The whole family watches through tears, and as she finishes, Sophie runs to her mother and holds her close.